What time is it, Vortex Nation? That's right. It's time for the comment of the week. Now, a couple episodes back, myself and in-house whitetail slammer, Mr. Eric Barber, a.k.a. Sling and Rick, and I did a podcast on selecting optics for your whitetail hunting kit. This comment is in relation to that podcast. It comes from @ToddBoyer9691. It's a 96. He writes in, Sling and Rick looks like he's been putting in work at the gym, or maybe it's just the mustache. Todd, no question, old Sling and Rick's been hitting the rock pile, but we have to agree, and I think we do, that mustache makes him look at least 20% bigger in a good way. Todd, if you're listening right now, and if you're not, I'm going to write you a message via the old YouTube comment machine because you have won yourself one of these super sweet Vortex Nation podcast hoodies. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. I'm wearing one of them right now. Todd, you're going to be wearing one too, and that's probably the best news that I could offer you today. So without further ado, let's get to the podcast. Let's start the show. Have a great day, everybody.
There are horses that are really talented and rodeo cowboys that are really talented, and they just don't fit together. Timing isn't right, and that's why when they find one that fits them, they'll pay $100,000 for them. Airplanes get involved, people pulling trailers for you, pulling horses different places. We went to 15 rodeos in 5 days over the 4th of July one time.
What is up, everybody? Got a very special podcast for you today. I have Mr. Jim Hamilton to my right. I have your brother Sam across from us, Jim. Sam, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for jumping back on.
Sure.
And we have a good friend of yours, Mr. Mike Barthelmess.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, you're from the great state of Montana.
I am, yes, sir.
Fantastic. Great choice, by the way. Born and raised?
I've been there forever, yes.
Lucky duck.
Yeah.
Sam, you've known Mike for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And you shot me a text, and you're like, Mark, you got to have my buddy Mike on. He's the most interesting man in the world. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And then you told me like 5 or 6 things. And I'm like, he is the most interesting man in the world.
Yes. Yeah, he, I've gotten to know with him, I've gotten to hunt with him, and he's like a legit cowboy, and of course, Yellowstone is a big popular show, and you kind of watch that show and you're like, man, this just kind of doesn't seem like the real thing, and Mike's the real thing. So I thought it'd be cool to get a guy who's the real thing on a podcast, and people get to kind of hear what a real cowboy is like.
So you watch Yellowstone, and then Sam just fact checks with you then?
He does, actually, yeah. And not the only one that's done that. People say, is this real or not? So, yeah, interesting perspective, though.
Sam mentioned a couple things, and I tell you what, if you can, I mean, I don't know where we start or where we end or where we end up or how we get there today, but maybe just give us, let's start with a brief background of just, growing up in Montana and your life. And I mean, it sounds like you've done just about everything under the sun that a person can do as a cowboy in that state. So,
well, I agree with you there. I wouldn't trade what I've lived for with anyone. Was born and raised in Montana, southeastern Montana, a little cow town they called Miles City. It kind of started with the Indian Wars, and a Fort Keel was there. My great-grandpa was stationed there in the military, and the commander there was General Nelson A. Miles. May not have heard of him, but that's what Miles City, where it got its name. It was before there was a town there, and so my grandpa was born there at that fort, and he homesteaded there and raised a family there, and so my dad stayed there, married a girl from there too, and so we started ranching, and I have 3 sisters, 2 older, 1 younger, and a brother younger that helps us in our guide business, and we were all raised ranching and country school, 1-room country school, and drove an old car back and forth, and it was just a great childhood, and we were raised horseback and taking care of cows, and hunting was part of the deal, but just kind of because we were there. And so it was, we learned to ride horses when we were kids, and learned to rope, and learned to all that stuff was just kind of natural. Didn't know that there were people that didn't do that, as you're growing up. So, yeah, great way to spend your life when you were a kid.
A purebred. In fact, Mike is so true blue that you'll notice if you're watching on YouTube, we had to point this out, that Mark, myself, and Sam are wearing our usual headsets, which some people have always thought we were trying to look like some sportscaster or something like that. It's just our usual microphones. MC Ryan went and found a lav mic so that Mike wouldn't have to remove his hat because it was just
we couldn't in good conscience
no
ask him to take his hat off. It just didn't seem right. Mike, I think you were probably open to it. We're like, no, that doesn't seem like the right
wrong.
call.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
Very cool though. So when you in growing up that way where you did, I mean, it seems like the ranching lifestyle is just, I mean, like you said, you didn't even know that there were people who didn't do that.
Right.
And so is that then what kind of leads to some of the other things that you got into? You know, like you said, you did hunting, and then I imagine, you know, you're learning to ride horses, you're out there ranching in the area that you're in. That lead to rodeo and some of the other stuff that you've done. I mean, is it all just kind of like that's the center hub and everything's spoked out from there?
It did, Jimmy. For the most part, you know, the reason that we didn't know anybody did anything else because everybody did it. You know, it was a ranching community, and you're going to a country school until you went to high school. You know, Mom went to town to get groceries. We didn't so much. You know, until you start high school, you really didn't know a world outside of that. And we're talking about early 60s. I was born in 52, so, and my grandpa rodeoed. In fact, that's how he kind of got his start ranching, with rodeo winnings. So my dad did, and we grew up basically, you know, you go to Brandon's, help the neighbors. We traded a lot of help, whether it was in the fall, gathering when they shipped their cattle, or in the spring. It was this ranch brands today, 3 days later you go to that ranch, and you just traded help, and that's the way it works. So as a little kid, you're roping calves and drag them to the fire to brand and vaccinate against disease and so on. And so you learned to do that when you were little. And I wanted to be a cowboy, like a rodeo cowboy, when I was really small. So 3-4 years old, I'm dragging a rope around, roping everything that moved. The dogs, the chickens, the cats, my sisters, you know, everything.
And he's got a good sister roping story too that I just heard this morning.
One of the things, my mom would lay the law down. And my sisters I was small from her age growing up, so I had an older sister, Bunny, that's 5 years older, and a sister, Nancy, that's a year older, and then a Kathy, a couple of years younger than I. And they didn't have the rodeo bug. They barrel raced, they rode, and Cowboy doesn't ranch a lot, but much as I did. But they didn't have I want to be a rodeo cowboy. This riding, I wanted to ride along the highway. I didn't want to ride back in these hills, you know, you want to be. And because I got to go to rodeos when I was a kid, and those guys were my heroes. And so I'm going to do the homework. I'm going to learn how to do this. So I wasn't big enough to do it horseback, 4, 5, 6 years old. So you'd do it on foot with everything that moved, like I said. And I'd rope my sisters, and if you roped them around the neck, they'd get rope burns on them. And so my mom laid down the law that I couldn't rope them around the neck. I could rope them over their head, but I had to let it fall down their waist or whatever.
Now, were they weren't voluntarily part of this practice?
No, they just come out of the house. Yeah, you know, you got a chance, right?
It was an ambush.
It was an ambush.
They weren't standing there.
You know, I would sit by the door of the chicken house and wait for one to come out, and because in rodeo you back in a box, they let the calf, away you go. So you're trying to simulate, and the dog comes out of the barn, and you're sitting here ready to roll. You know, so you're doing this stuff, and so I had these rules.
Well, that's what I love about it. It's like you can rope your sisters, but we got to set some ground rules.
Right. I'm not going to stop you. I know that.
Yeah. You're right. So you can't, they'd cry, go to the house, because they got rope burns on their neck. And, you know, you choke. And they were bigger than I, so there were some paybacks, I felt, that had to be, and that was about the only way I could, because I wasn't physically big enough to take care of them. There was 2 of them older than me, so. But I was playing with my sister, Kathy, and And I had you can still buy this stuff, I think, the little fake leather vest with the sheriff badge on, and I had the guns on and my own hat, but she was the bad guy and I was the good guy, and I had my rope, and I arrested her for something she did, and I tied her hands behind her back, and I put her in the bunkhouse. That was my jail. And was kind of guarding the jail, had my back turned, I heard the door open, and she came running out of there making an escape. And there's a sidewalk to the main house, and then there was a rolling, sloping hill down to the yard where we'd picnic and whatever. And she's getting away, and she's bigger and faster than I am. And her hands are still tied right behind her back. She's making a run for it, and I've got my rope in my hand, so I run about 2 steps, and I get within 20 feet, which is close enough with the rope, and it goes over her head. I didn't get her by the neck, but when it came to her feet,
oh no!
Then over the hip, and you can imagine running downhill with your hands tied behind your back, and somebody takes your feet out, and she hits on her face, and she didn't say anything right away because of the grass and mud, but her nose was bleeding. She'd bit through her lip. And then the ruckus starts, so I run down and untie her quick as I can, trying to stay like, and Mom comes outside, and I didn't get in trouble because I didn't rope her around the neck. I roped her around the feet. And it was her fault. If she had never tried to escape, there wouldn't have been a problem to start with.
It's true. Well, she was a criminal.
She was, and she knew it.
She was resisting.
Yeah. So, that's just part of the process that was part of being a country kid then.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like you had that rodeo bug pretty strong at a young age.
I did.
Who were the guys that you looked up to?
Yeah.
Well, that leads us to another story that's amazing, and people could probably relate to this. They had what they called a steer roping championship in Miles City, and that's a single steer. You rope around the horns, you put your rope over their hip, and your horse, and you trip the steer, and then your horse continues to log. They call it pulls a steer, and you tie 3 legs, and we're talking about a 600-pound steer, and that in those days that's the coolest roping guys there were. And I was 8, and I'd go to these roping. They'd once a year. It was a national championship. They'd hold it in Miles City. And there were guys like Don McLaughlin, and they were world champions then. And these guys, I would walk around through their horses and their trailers, and just like they were God to me. And this guy was laying in his pickup, taking little breaks, horse tied up, and he wasn't up to rope for 10 or 12 guys. And I come walking by, and I'm looking at this sorrel horse, and man, this thing is cool, and these guys are cool. And I was 8 again, and he comes out and, how are you, young man? How are you doing? And I said, I'm great, And he's unties his horse, and he puts his bridle on, and he said, can you ride a horse? I said, yes, sir. Puts me on this horse and calls him by whatever his name is. And there was a racetrack there, and he said, take him out there and warm him up for me, would you? And my feet didn't reach the stirrups. There's this hole behind the horn. I stuck my hand in there and went out and loped this horse in circles and got him warmed up and came back, and he shook my hand and thanked me. And so that was an experience and I knew who he was at that time. And because he was one of my heroes. So wife and kids later, my wife's mother got inducted into the National Cowboy Hall of Fame. And that's got to be 10, 15 years ago, and I was 8 when I saw this guy last. And we walked in Oklahoma City at that facility, and there's an old man sitting there with a lady, and whoever had inductees into that ceremony had tables of their own, so our table was here, and my wife's family and so on. And my son was probably 10 at the time and had an old straw hat that we'd go to the rodeos, and he would go to the national the PRCA rodeos, the professional rodeos in Montana, and he would have these guys sign this hat, get autographs. And I said, and I hadn't seen this guy since I was 8, but when I watched him walk in there, and I was like, I know that. And so I sent our son Brian, I said, go over there and have that guy sign your hat. Asked him if he would, and he did. And he came back, and I said, what's his name? He said, Clark McIntyre. I said, that's the guy. I knew that's who that was. And the kids were like, cool. I said, he was a steer roping champion in 1961 or whatever. And they were like, you know, he had Joe Beaver, some of the new, the more recent champions that everybody knew. And I said, you know, have you ever heard of Reba McIntyre? That's her dad.
No way.
And then all of a sudden he was a hero, you know. I mean, and they respected the fact. I mean, they've been around Cowboys enough, and they had the respect for somebody that's done it years ago. But it was a another great thing growing up in Miles City in that cowboy country they call. And then Miles City is still called the cow capital of the West. So.
Is it?
Yep.
That's cool. Now you said something that made it seem. So you said you got bit by the rodeo bug when you were younger, but you had older sisters who they would do cowboy stuff. They were doing all that, but they weren't quite bit by the rodeo bug. Now, is that something that I guess I always just kind of assumed, like, if you were into cowboying, that you would see rodeo as just kind of like the pinnacle, the competitive level of whatever you're doing. And so I I'm thinking, like, why wouldn't everybody want to be doing that? But are there a number of cowboys out west that are kind of like, yes, you know, not for me. I do all this stuff as a job, but, like, you know, the competition side of things, not into it? Or how's that?
There is, Jimmy, and I think that, you know, cowboys are coming different shapes and sizes than what they can do. You know, there's a ranch cow. This is going to be my opinion only.
Sure.
There's people that learned how to be a rodeo cowboy, and God bless bull riders that don't really ride, maybe weren't raised on a ranch, didn't know how to ride a horse very well. There's guys that ride bucking horses that they put them on they win the bronc riding, and then they get on the horse to run around the arena for the victory lap and can't hardly ride a horse galloping. And they'll say that, you know, you got to come home and learn how to ride a horse so that you look better doing that, because they are bronc riding buggers and won world championships. So you have those that wanted to be a rodeo cowboy and did the work and went to schools. There's so many ways to learn to do that. And man, that would be scary, you know, not to have a riding background, decide you want to be a bull rider. I've never had that kind of intestinal fortitude ever to want to do that. I wanted to do the roping part. But then there's, like you said, Jimmy, there's a ranch, and they rope outside, doctoring cattle. They do all this stuff. They just don't do it, you know, they don't play the national anthem first. You know, they do their thing, and then there's guys that do both. You know, their background was there, and then they like the competitive part, and it's kind of how rodeo got started. You know, my guy's better than your guy at the ranches, you know, and they pretty quick the competition got together. And so there's kind of three different, there's a guy that does both. There's a guy that ranches, and then there's a guy that was maybe raised in town but wanted to learn. And my gosh, how those guys, what they go through, and they're some of the world's best are those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's, you know, compliments to them for having the guts to do that. You know.
And speaking of world's best, from my understanding, Mike, you were a pretty accomplished roper yourself.
Yeah, that's what I was.
I did.
Mike Silver, I dabble.
In regional, I'll put it this way. Regionally, I did. Really didn't have the finances to travel and do the professional thing that you see on TV now. We competed against a lot of those same people. Certainly not to say that I was to their level, not saying that at all. But I got exposed to that, and you know, regionally we did okay. I've got to go to great places. You know, we rodeo. My wife and I met in college. We rodeoed there. Had rodeo scholarships at Montana State University in Bozeman, and then after that worked on the ranch, but rodeoed was kind of how we made our living for probably 15 years after that. And we were more, we were in California and Texas some, but for the most part, Washington, Oregon, Canada, Montana, the Dakotas, and that kind of thing. And a great life, great people. You know, every business has them, I guess, but you know, the relationship you get from that kind of, our kids grew up doing it, didn't know any better. You know, I mean, we would pull into a rodeo and everybody knows everybody, and we got our daughter was a little baby and her son's 2 or 3, and we've got to get horses saddled and get ready to compete. Been driving all night, you got to get squared away because we got to give them your best, right? And people would come by and, we'll take Blair and put them in front of their horse and they're gone, and everybody knew everybody. Everybody took care of everybody's kids, it was a great life. So I wouldn't have traded it. And it fed whatever competitive juices you had.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about like making your living for 15 years, rodeo life, but what is that life like? Like, what does your day-to-day look like?
Just to give you a quick example, the 4th of July, as they call it, Cowboy Christmas, because a lot of communities have rodeos, celebrate the 4th, and part of that celebration will be rodeos. So they'll start anywhere from the 1st, usually a rodeo in a town will be 2 to 3 days, or performances, one each day kind of a thing. And then they'll have, for example, there'll be a 3-day rodeo, and they have, to keep it to a 2.5-hour performance, they might have 10 contestants in each event, and they might have 60 people enter that event. So they have what they call a slack session in the morning, which is, it's not a paid performance as far as the fans and so on. And so when you're trying to go to several rodeos, you enter and you're going to this rodeo this day, and it's an afternoon performance. That morning you were at a slack performance in another town, you got to that one in the afternoon, you have a rodeo that night somewhere. Airplanes get involved, people pulling trailers for you, pulling horses different places. But we went to 15 rodeos in 5 days over the 4th of July one time.
Wow.
How many miles is that? Like, were they separated?
I know we started in...
I'm sure you didn't have the time to be logging miles. So pardon the dumb question, but I mean, I just can't imagine, it's like, baseball players are what? They'll do a doubleheader in the same place, but like 15 rodeos in 5 days.
Well, we were up in Elkwater, Alberta, north of the Montana border, probably 75 miles, and probably further, more on the east side of Montana. And we were up there in the afternoon. We left there at 6 o'clock in the evening, and we were up in Nampa, Idaho the next afternoon at 1 o'clock. And then we got on an airplane and we went to Pocatello, Idaho, and then we went to Idaho, and then we went to 3 in Montana, and back. We ended up in Vail, Oregon when we were done.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
And you needed to do that, you needed to be at a certain level of competition, because there was a lot of money spent. It would cost you $180 to $200 to enter a rodeo, plus fuel for 2 rigs, plus airplanes and pilots and those kind of things. So you need to be winning more than your share.
Yeah.
To make that all work.
And so when you're not like, going to the airport and flying commercial, like somebody that has a plane and buzzing on over.
We just hired a pilot in a plane.
Okay, gotcha.
Flew a lot of like 182s.
Okay, yeah.
That kind of stuff. Or twin engine 210s sometimes, there'd be 6 of us get in there or something. And it would be a timing thing. There's an airstrip beside, and all this ahead of time, right? You're scheduling you've got so many hours, and you've got time zones, all kinds of things that you figure in, and they're playing the national anthem, your wife's got your horse saddled, or whoever's hauling the horses, and you're running with your rope bag from the airplane to get. And then when that leaves, you time the trailer, run, jump on the plane, and you got to get somewhere else before. Yeah, it was. I wouldn't do it again, but I loved it. Driving all night. You're pulling horses from. I remember leaving Butte, Montana at 11:30. It was a muddy rain. We'd wash the horses off, put hay in the trailer, and we had to be in North Dakota the next morning at 7 o'clock for the slack, and we drove all night. And figured we had to average 60-some miles an hour, and you unload the horse 10 minutes before it starts, and he'd been in a trailer all night, and pull him out of there and ask him for everything he's got. It's, and it's just a young man's sport too.
Are you
young horse's sport too?
It is.
Right? It's got to be.
And the thing you did, the thing you did, Jimmy, to keep that horse. We had their blood tested. We had make sure vitamins were here. There was vitamins in their feed. They had a certain amount of protein level in the hay they ate while they were traveling. You drove corners real slow, so that you'd pull in to fuel up and you'd open the side door, that horse would have his nose on the trailer sleeping, you know, and they could, we wrapped their legs, put a certain kind of liniment mixture on their legs to keep their tendons tight and wrap their legs so there was no soreness in them. You can imagine, have you ever gotten a trailer and closed your eyes and stand back there and let somebody drive? You know, that
not voluntarily.
Right.
It depends on the driver, but yeah, no.
But it gives you an idea of what they're dealing with, because they don't understand and they can't see out, and everything in there, they've got to tighten leg muscles to stay. And when you pull them for 12 hours really hard and then jump them out of there and ask them for 110%, you know, you have to take the time to care for them and give them a chance to rest when they can. And
how do you? See, this is where it's like. We're only selecting one of many paths in this conversation as we go, with which we could go down. And so, you know, I'm going to divert it one way. You could divert it back, Mark or Sam or whatever, or even Mike. So now I'm curious, how many horses is there like in Montana, are there like lots with big balloon people that are flapping around with horses all parked outside, and you go around, there's some guys like, I tell you what, this one's only got this many miles on it, and for, you know, I'll give you the extended 3-year warranty on it, and then you got to go through and check and, you know, see which one you want and test drive them or something like. How do you get a good horse that you know is going to hold up to all that stuff? Because I imagine you can't just pick any old horse, right? That thing's got to be just.
You're right.
Just
There's so
dialed.
much the horse has to do on his own, particularly in the calf roping, which is what I team roped and steer wrestled also. But when you step off of the horse and he's there by himself, he needs to stop, get back, work the rope, keep it tight. When you flank the calf, he needs to keep the rope tight, but he can't drag him because that'll cause the calf to kick, and those kind of, they do so much on their own. And we were lucky enough to raise ours and make our own. So we had probably 8, 9, 10 head of horses, and we would have the A team, and we'd have the practice horses that, like, we wouldn't practice on our good horses very often. We'd if they were making some mistakes, we'd put the good runs back in him at practice, maybe run 2 or 3 calves, and then I'd rope 25 or 30 calves a night on other horses just for me. And my dad was a big part of that. He was, and to say that my sisters didn't have the bug, I can't say that's true. They just didn't have the opportunity that I did. My dad was a calf roper, and he's got a son, and you know how that would go. But the girls were good cowgirls, and they barrel raced and did the girls' events. But I would have to say my dad just didn't afford them the opportunity to go further. Not that they didn't have that spirit, they did, but hopefully that answered your question. But there's, you know, when there's people make horses, rodeo horses, and you have to have the right mentality. You know, when they do it at home in your practice arena, it's like going from the driving range to the golf course. Sometimes things change. And so the horses need to be able to do that when there's a carnival and there's a band playing, and they need to be able to focus, and not all of them are capable of doing that. And the pressure, you know, they understand. You back in a corner, jump out of the trailer as an example, being hauled all night, back him in the corner, and he needs to go from 0 to 40 in 3 jumps, and he needs to go when you ask him to go, or you're going to get penalized for going too quick, and he's got to. Yeah, there's just a lot goes into the mental part of it for the horse as well as the people.
Yeah, because I don't know first thing about horses. I just know that anybody I do know who's worked with horses talks about how much work goes into you and that animal's connection, and you know, having the animal do what it, you know, like just mentally being connected so that it's doing what you're asking of it, and you're figuring out what it needs and all that stuff. I mean, and so to be doing it at that level of like, oh, hey, we're not just working, we're here competing. There's rules now, and there's pressure, there's time, there's points, there, however it is. That's just like, I mean, you must have just had, like, did you feel like you had some sort of sense of telekinesis with some of the real good horses? Like, you're like, oh yeah, we get each other, because I, you know.
And for part of that, you're exactly right. One of the horses I was most successful on, we grew up together. I was 12, 14 years old. I broke him to ride, took him to 4-H, took him to the fair, and we kind of learned together. And he actually got better than I did, faster than I did. But we knew we had a trust, and there were things that we could do together that we had practiced, that when we got in a real high pressure place where we're roping for a bunch of money. And in those days, I ran a calf in Lethbridge, Alberta for winter take all for $5,000, and in '83 that was a lot of money. And I remember putting myself in a happy place. So we went down away from everybody and rode in circles before this rodeo started, and we're like, okay, how can I put myself and this horse in the best position to win? And in practice, we roped calves that that ran hard, and so I would have to start early, because when I left the box to be caught up, and because I started early, the calves would move underneath my horse's neck. Ideally, you're straight behind him, and because I'm coming, the calves would see me and they would move, so I could stand out in my stirrup and look under my horse's neck. And I roped 1 million calves growing up that way. Huh. And so I'm going like, I've never dealt with that kind of pressure, like for $5,000. We're usually roping for $500, which is bad enough, especially when you're got 2 checks out for $180 and they rode them to rodeo and you got to win today and tomorrow to make this thing all over. So you kind of put yourself in those positions. But so I'm thinking, what can I do to make this work? So I thought, ideally, in the box your horse starts in, it's open in the front and calf's here. You come to what they call the pin. It's a barrier stretched across that if you leave early, it breaks, and a 10-second penalty. So so you get in line as quick as you can. And I thought, this little black horse and I had run 1 million of them underneath our neck. And that was my office. I can make that shot no matter what, right? So I thought, why don't I come down the middle of the box? I'll have to leave a little later because the distance to that rope is shorter that way than diagonally across the box. And if I can get that calf to step to the left, it doesn't matter if my eyes are shut. I can make that deal work every time because I've done it. And so we did, and he went left and worked out perfect.
That's so cool.
And he knew exactly what, put him in a position to win, gave myself the best chance to win. And it didn't matter if the band was playing, there were 10,000 people in that stand screaming, it didn't matter. You could just go, okay, we've done this 1 million times. And so, it's like any sport. You try to put yourself in the best position to be successful. But growing up together was a great, you made a great point. There are horses that are really talented and rodeo cowboys that are really talented, and they just don't fit together. Timing isn't right, and that's why when they find one that fits them, they'll pay $100,000 for them.
Yeah.
And that's scary because they got a heartbeat, Things can go wrong, cripple just like NFL players, whatever.
Right.
But if you're going to, because the guy you're trying to beat's riding one, so you better be.
That's right.
If you're going to compete, you're going to have to be at that level. You got to bring your best stuff, and the best horse is going to be. It makes it life so much easier. In my mind, once you learn the physical tools to do it, and can get by most of the mental stuff, the horse is 75% of whether you win or lose.
I mean, people
cool.
talk a lot, and we've been talking about it, but just the connection that people have with horses, and you mentioned, trust being a big part of that. And with that connection, how much are you trying to, like, even if you're nervous, are you trying to dial back, like, being nervous so it doesn't make the horse nervous, or like, what's going on there as far as, like, trying to manage, I guess, both of your attitudes?
That's a great question, Mark, because they can tell. It's amazing. You have a routine. When you get there, you do this. You unload them, you go get them a bucket of water. They've been in the trailer. They've been eating. And so you try to match that routine. It's like a pre-shot routine on the golf course. I don't know if you're a golfer, but Jimmy, I know you play some. So you understand what I'm talking about. So so you try to keep things as normal, but when you get on them, so when you're on the ground, you can kind of bluff them that this is just the regular deal. But when you get on, they can feel the tension. They can feel it in their, the bit in their mouth, how you handle it. If you're, so you have to.
Do
really,
you know how much $5,000 is?
Don't mess this up. We drew a good calf. He goes out here and he goes to the left, and we can't.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting you'd ask that question because it's phenomenal. You have to change. You have to try to keep your tone the same, how you cinch them up, how you saddle. And you do it for yourself as well. But you know, this is what I know. I've done this a million times. This isn't that big deal. It's just another calf in the 500 that you've run, so what's the big deal?
Yeah, and Mike, you said we drew a calf, and I think I remember you telling me one time that you guys would actually scout the calves that you were roping. Like you knew each calf really well, right? You
do. They have what they call stock contractors that bring bucking horses, calves, bulldog, and steers, everything to supply the livestock at the rodeos, and they have several rodeos in a year. Every weekend they have a rodeo somewhere. So maybe you're 5 or 6 different contractors in a region you're going to. And at the first rodeo, you go look at the calves' numbers. They have numbers in their ears and they draw them out of a hat. Before every rodeo, you drew this one, just a random draw. Judges are there and they draw them. And you write those calves down and you watch them go. And you write down, this calf runs hard, this calf comes up the rope, this one will kick you a little bit, this one goes left, this is a loper, he's a dandy. Loper meaning not run too fast.
Are you just watching them come off the trailer then? Or
no, you're watching them during the rodeo. You drew one of them, but there's 10 or 12 more, or if you're in a slack, you'll get to see that same calf. Maybe they have 30 calves at the rodeo, 60 guides are entered, you'll get to see that calf go twice.
Okay.
So you have a book on what he'll do. And then after about 3 rodeos, they're real habitual, they'll pattern themselves the same. So you have calves that you really can't win anything on. You've got calves that, boy, if things work, you can win something on. And then there's going to be 5 of them that you draw one of those and don't, then you've got to get through the mental part of it. Don't screw this up.
That's like
because your horse is, you've done the homework. Exactly.
Yeah.
You've done, and you got the calf. Just don't make a mistake. And that's when the mental part of it from the contestant's perspective is, to be successful, you got to win on the good ones.
You'd think the calves would mix it up a little bit, like I went left 3 times, and like every time I got roped.
I mean, they're young, right? Like you have kids. I've got one. Sam's had kids. You've had kids. I mean, It's like kids never do the same thing every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, my kid one time is like, I'm going to rip everything out of the lower shelf in the pantry today. And then the next day, I'm going to try and kamikaze off of the basement steps because you left the gate open. And she did the same thing every day. It'd be real easy.
This is true.
I'd have my horse ready, my rope ready every day.
Just
roping that kid.
Just about to go down the stairs, roper.
All your kids would have rope burns on their neck.
Yeah. Well, mine would, because I wouldn't be very good with the aim. But yeah, it seems like so much what you described. I mean, really, from just about everything that you've had to do, I'm getting a sense, a requirement for a great deal of mental fortitude for rodeo. It sounds like just an incredible mental game, having to keep yourself in check in high pressure situations. I'd love to hear more about, just on the cowboying side of things when it's for work and not for the competition side of things. I can only imagine there's a lot of perseverance and things that takes place there. And of course, we know that you've done the hunting thing, you've guided for many years, and that also is, something that your patience is being tested and your ability to just stay cool and calm and collected all the time. You got to be pretty good at that by now, Mike. You seem like somebody who probably is. It just the air about you.
I don't know about pretty good, but how I put it a few years ago that, in the hunting business particularly, you get an opportunity to work on your people's skills. And it's a great opportunity, and you don't have to pay for it. They pay you for it. I thought it was a great way to learn things. But it's, been guiding hunters for 40 years, and I can't say enough about the people, the industry that I've met. I've got lifelong friends. I've had an opportunity to take a guy hunting, and he brings his wife, or I took a guy hunting, he brings his son. His son brings the grandson, and dad and grandpa come as non-hunters. So I've got, they've been generous enough to let me be part of their dreams, and that's very special to me. And the people are phenomenal. It doesn't matter what part of the country, and I'm sure in your business you see that too, where when you have kind of a common bond, and everybody hunts for different reasons, everybody has different ways of looking at things, but But as John Wayne says, when it gets down to the rat killing, we're all the same that way.
Yeah.
And in 40 years of guiding hunters, I've met some amazing people. It's been phenomenal.
It seems to me, by and large, you're talking about rodeoing and the people and the community and hunting, and I think those types of activities, in my opinion, by and large, kind of those salty the earth type people, gravitate to them. They're kind of pulled in by those sorts of things, and so you do meet a lot of genuinely like really good people.
Mm-hmm. We meet people who understand that things could totally go your way, or they could completely not go your way. And there's a number of things that can oftentimes be out of your control.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's you get drawn a calf in the case of rodeo, it's like,
Sure.
well, yeah, this one's just going to be like, we're going to have a rough day today. Or, you're out hunting and you're just on the wrong map dot somewhere. Just didn't end up in the right spot. Everything blew up.
Yeah.
Or, chance of a
most of the
lifetime.
time.
And yeah, right. Yeah. But it's just so people got to be, people who are into those types of hobbies got to be okay with sometimes the highs and the lows.
And I think, with the lows, the highs are so much better.
Mm-hmm.
When you put, and as you guys have hunted and you understand there's no justice in hunting. You can do all the preparation and you can do the things but that's part of it too, and if you can accept that, it becomes don't paint yourself in a corner that, or deal yourself a hand you can't play, and it makes it a lot more fun for everybody if you understand that. And hunters have, over 40 years, that the hunting, how it changed from everything from advertising to equipment to clothes to, you guys have seen that evolution of things, quality of glasses, and there weren't even rangefinders when I started. There wasn't such a thing as that. There was 6-power scopes were the coolest thing ever because everybody had 4-power scope and a so you, and then how information hunters have access to. The hunter that comes to be part of our deal now is a whole different guy than came in 1984.
How so primarily, would you say? Like, what do you think is the biggest difference between the guys you're working with, guys or gals that you're working with now versus 40 years ago?
Boy, that's hard to kind of narrow it to maybe one thing, Jimmy, but I would just guess that maybe more prepared. Certainly their equipment is more capable, and they're more capable of operating the equipment, whether it be a bow or a rifle. And there's so many things like podcasts or like videos or like things that, how do you change a blade on a lawnmower? You can YouTube. They can learn how to do a lot of this stuff before they get there. Before, the guys didn't have access to that, and they're, I remember I was talking to Sam about in their earlier days, we had two ways of getting our business started. You'd have those little 1-inch by 2-inch ads in the back of Peterson Hunting Magazine, Outdoor Life, Field and Stream, that was about it, and then you'd go to sport shows. And you would get letters in the mail. People didn't call, and so you would, handwritten letters, you'd put a brochure and you'd write back to them and send it back, and this whole process takes 3 weeks sometimes. And that's how, and now, you can get a picture of a live deer, a deer that somebody else just got on your phone, and on your way home, 30 people have it in front of them. And you've got an opportunity, look at this deer got away. And in a period of a second. Before we were lugging cameras because cameras, the picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And so, but there was no way to get it to people. And now those people come and they're prepared, they understand so many things. Not that the people that back in the 80s, they're the same people, they're all hunters, They just didn't have the access to, we wore cotton and froze to death. Then we started wearing wool. Now we're wearing synthetic stuff, whether it's Kuiu, Sitka, or whatever that's light and does better. And, we just have more information. And it's interesting to watch. First of all, they wanted to get one. So our business was geared to the big question we would get answered is what your percentage of kill is. Then it kind of went to, and it might have been partly our fault on that. Not that it was a fault at all, but they kind of, there was a period of time where it was bigger the better type stuff. And you've probably seen that as well. And then now it's all about opportunity. You know, do we have an opportunity? What, if you want to shoot something big, you need to hunt where they grow big, right? You know, there's places that have a lot of elk. There's places that don't have many. There's places that grow bigger than other places, and so on. I'm sure whitetail, I'm not a whitetail hunter, but there's parts of the Midwest that are probably known for, boy, if you got a place in this county and wherever, Ohio here, Wisconsin, wherever, that you've got to step up on some places, right?
One thing I know for sure is that southwestern Wisconsin and northeastern Iowa are not that place. Terrible. Horrible whitetail hunting.
Yeah.
No one should ever come here.
Yeah.
It's absolutely just not worth your time.
I don't even think there's any deer here.
No. What you want to get, where you're going to get deer is if you go as far north in Wisconsin as possible.
I see. Okay.
Southeast Wisconsin, kind of like, you know, you get near Racine in Chicago.
Milwaukee.
Yeah, more concrete, the more deer you see.
Big. Eating a lot of McDonald's. Okay, yeah, but that's interesting. Do you feel like are hunters a bit more, I'm curious, are hunters a bit more fragile now? Like, do they get a little bit more thrown off if the things that they're coming prepared with, like their technology and their fancy hunting clothes and their, you know, this, that, and the other thing, like somehow they didn't plan right, like, oh, I'm not wearing the right, you know, technical base layer for today's weather.
It's not matching.
Yeah, it's not matching. Or my Onyx isn't connecting to the satellite. Like, do we get more thrown off by that than people?
I think that, boy, that's a careful question. I think that they have changed some just due to the technology. You know, game cameras and everything is so accessible, and they're, you know, people are used to running businesses on their phone, and so when you get somewhere where there's no cell service, it's like then there's a mindset change that needs to take place, and as far as them being prepared, you know, if a hunter comes there not prepared, I kind of feel that's probably on me. It's up to me to, you know, I'm supposed to be the doctor in this situation, and you're paying me for what I should have told you. So, and we do a lot of that. My brother and I, we self-evaluate. How can we do better? You know, these kind of things. The things you can control, we try to do those as good as you can, and hunters help us learn how to do that better every year, and take everything as situations, as constructive, and okay, we can do this better. But you're correct in the fact that, you know, and it's a cool thing. They can FaceTime their kids and their wife, and when they get you know, like where we hunt a lot of, you have service at the house, but when you leave the house, there's nothing. And they do get a little, you know, the weather's bad and they have no communication, and you have to revert back to how we used to do it. You know, we have to, you know, make good decisions and try to remember which way you went, because you can't track your GPS and so on. So they have changed in that degree. But still, even with that said, you know, it's just a different elk change. You know, how we hunt them over you use whitetail the same. You know, they figure out that you know this, and you start doing this all the time, and pretty quick they go like, we got to make an adjustment, and it's up to you to let them teach you how to hunt them. You know,
sure.
And so they change as well. So that's part of the beauty of the hunting business to me is to be able to roll with that flow and still provide a great experience, and you get a chance to meet all kinds of folks that have been. I mean, I love hearing, you know, guys say, well, you don't want to hear our hunting stories. I do, because I never got a chance to go there. I've never, you know, tell me about this, and it helps you understand who they are and what would make this a good experience for them. So, yeah, you know, the more I know about you, the better I can do my job.
I do think, you know, with just the gear these days and the technology that I utilize both of quite a bit, and the connectivity when you lose, some of that stuff, there's a vulnerability that creeps in that I think used to be our natural state. That was just daily life. You didn't have that connectivity. If you were out on your own, you're out on your own. If something happened, you're going to have to figure it out, right? And so when that happens now, you're just, you're not used to it. And it's a spooky feeling, I mean, I think it's even spooky when we didn't have those things, but you went into it also realizing that at the same point, I guess.
Well, the funny thing is, though, is that also there's more YouTube videos and articles and blogs and other things that you can read as to what to do if you find yourself in a situation where you've lost communication and your cell phone and whatever, Like, I could look up a video right now on, 15 different ways to start a fire, and, 14 of them I never would have known before, but maybe I could save them. So, I don't know. It comes down to the preparedness, and so I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people may be used to who are going on a backcountry hunt. They may be used to having technology at their beck and call, but at the same time, prior to that, they were able to use it to get much more prepared than they would have been if they just would have gone in cold. So
100%. Watch the videos before you lose your phone in the marsh, like I did this fall.
Yes.
I did find it though, and I used technology to do that.
Nicely done.
Good.
Mike, when did your guiding and outfitting start, and where did it start, and how'd you get into it? Was that just a natural, you fell into it, or how did that go?
I actually have to. There was I call him a mentor. It was a great guy. I was, in my younger days, long fur was worth money in the early 70s, and I was trying to learn to trap, and it kind of all went with ranching and the rodeo thing. You were learning to rope, and I was trying to learn to trap, and there was a government trapper in Miles City, and he took the time to spend several days, week at a time. Shot competitively in the military, and a great guy, had a great background, and I learned so much from him through the trapping, and he told me that coyotes I was learning on coyotes, which my understanding is they're not the best ones to learn on. They're hard to catch, and he was the first guy that I ever heard say, they'll teach you how to catch them, you just got to watch. Don't get frustrated, backtrack them, understand where they hit, where they smelled, how the air traveled through here, location, so on. And so through that, Mark, he was, and we hunted deer growing up. When I was a little kid, my dad and I hunted horseback, and my job was when we saw a deer that we wanted to shoot, Dad would pull a gun out of the scabbard, get down on one knee out in front, I'd jump off and hold the horses. That was my job. And we'd dump the middle out of him and drag him out where we get him with the pickup, and that we just kind of grew up, and we ate venison a lot. Had turkeys there and so on, and so I'd hunted a lot. And Gene was like, well, this is a really nice ranch. You ought to guide some hunters. And I'm like, people pay money to shoot these? And that's pretty much exactly what I said. We had antelope and things, and he said, oh, geez, so it started there, Mark. And I was like, how do you do that? And he said, well, I think in Montana you have to get an outfitter's license, and then you start advertising, and well, what's it worth, and so you look up in other people, then you could look up in some of those 1-inch ads I was talking about, and they would have prices there. Or, and then Gene helped me. He would call as a prospective hunter, and this is kind of the market and so on. So he helped me get started, and I think we took 6 hunters the first year. I took my outfitter test in 1983, April of 1983. I've been doing it since then. But so that's kind of how, and then we just kind of started mule deer hunting on the ranch, and then the neighbors, and we didn't really lease anything from them. We just, would you be interested in let us have a couple of deer off of your place? And the mailman still hunted, and the gas guy that delivers gas, and the kids and whatever, you weren't, it's not like it is now where you have big blocks of ground leased up exclusively and so on. But so it just kind of went through that, and next thing you know, we're in western Montana packing hunters into Bob Marshall, and then we had a business in Alberta for 10 or 12 years, and we've kind of sized back to archery hunting and the mule deer hunting that we're doing now. But there was a time we took 60 hunters a year, in 4 or 5 different operations. So
That's a lot of hunters.
it was.
Yeah, that's a fair few.
It was. It was busy, and you needed to be young, and you packing mules and things. You needed to. But what a great life. It's been the hunting business has been amazing to our family, and our kids were raised in, our brothers, and everybody's involved. My mom cooked for it. Everybody had a dog in the fight, and we all loved it. So it was.
I mean,
That's really cool.
That's super cool. I mean, yes, you're working, yes, you're running a business, but you're doing it with your family too, and everybody's working hard and working together. And what were you doing in Alberta then?
We moose hunted there, hunted elk. We had 4 bighorn sheep permits there, so it was a great time. I enjoyed new country. Had some native guys that helped us there that taught us a lot about. One of the guys was, I think he was 70 when he was guiding for us, and he was born and raised on the river, was 35 years old before he went to town. I mean, didn't speak English very well, but knew every herbal cure. This berry's good, this one's not. That he would almost and wouldn't take a lunch. He would just graze like a saddle horse. It was amazing.
Insane.
I learned. The opportunity I had to hunt in Alberta and learn from those people, and I'd never hunted sheep before, and got an opportunity to learn how to do that. I hadn't hunted moose, and of course hired the guide and done for a while till I've got. As you guys know, sheep live in some of the most amazing country, and we were hunting bighorn sheep there, and so living off your back for a few days, and we had a little spike camp up high that we could come back and reload and go again, and because of my packing moose quarters on my back, I had to have a few knee operations, but that's all good.
Just a couple.
What you gonna do?
How do you come in from Montana and you go up to Alberta and you somehow meet a guy like, the gentleman you were talking about, 70 years old or something like that? I'm sure he didn't find you on MySpace or on Facebook, hey, I know every herbal remedy, and also, never went into town until I was 35 years old.
Probably an Instagram reel.
Could have been.
Yeah, back in '84, those Instagram reels.
Yeah, they were so hot back then.
These 10 natives of Alberta are phenomenal to add to your guiding operation. You'll never believe number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were at a sports show in our business in, I think it was Oregon. We met a couple from Alberta there, and we were kind of looking for some more diverse things, and they talked to us about a business up there that was coming up for sale, they thought. And so we went and visited with that guy, ended up buying that business from him, and these people were part of his system then and his company, so they kind of came with it.
Nice.
And thank God they did. They made, I just couldn't believe the knowledge, what that man had done. I mean, the GPS, and it was just like, and one story that was interesting, we used 4-wheelers, jet boats. They have what they call cut lines, seismic cut lines, and so they would come in and it'd be like a 4-foot grid, and they would drill holes and put charges in them, and that vibration through the ground would show them where gas pockets were and oil and so on. So there was a lot of that gridded in, and there were old fire trails. So we didn't use horses, we used a jet boat, and then they called them quads, 4-wheelers, to get around and then hunt on foot. We just used them as a horse. We'd go there, we're gonna hunt, and we'd take off on foot. And this older Indian, and we called him, and he called me a white man, and we argued back. It was a great exchange, great people. And there was no politically correct nothing there, and then everybody was good with it. So we had a great time. But he wanted to go elk hunt in a place, and he didn't drive these 4-wheelers, and my hunters were full, so Tommy was his name. He jumped on behind, and away we went. And this bull drug us around by the hair like they'll do sometimes, and we ended up getting the bull, but we're a long ways from our ride. And we get him middle out of him and got a fire built to keep the hunters warm, and we're processing this bull, and we got quarters hung up, and because we're not going to be able to get it, we're going to have to backpack him out of there, and it didn't have enough manpower, and so on. So we got this bull in good shape, and we head back to the four-wheelers. We're probably, it's an hour and a half walk, and it's probably 10:30 already. And Tommy's, "You carry a flashlight?" He didn't need a flashlight. You know, he's like, "Whatever, we'll stay tonight if it gets too dark. You know, it's not that big a deal." And I'm like, "All right." And he said, "Shortcut." And he would short phrases and real broken English, and so we're heading along, and one of the hunters didn't have a flashlight, so I had a flashlight, and I was kind of where they could see behind them. We're traveling, and Tommy had guided hunters enough that, you know, he would just automatically take a break, and he made it look like he needed a break, you know, and it was a good thing, because everybody felt good about taking a little break, getting away. So we'd stop, and he'd look at the stars and clouds, and we'd take a little break, and then he'd head out. And we're bushwhacking through, and darker than the inside of a cow going down through here. And we stop and do the same, look at the stars, and he had a "Nice night, eh?" You know, he'd say. You know, and hunters like, "Man," and everybody's dragging. And we stop, and again, we've been bushwhacking for an hour and a half on a line with no lights, no nothing, other than just this little flashlight going along beside us. We stop again, and he stands there pretty quick. He bumps me. "You drive, eh?" And we're standing by the four-wheelers, and we had gone for an hour and a half across country through the bush, and he came out right where they were. And we'd went off the main trail probably a quarter to half a mile, bushwhacked out through the brush just to get him off the road and whatever, and he just walked right to him. It was phenomenal.
That's incredible.
Just knew the coordinates, the latitude and longitude already just in his head. It was programmed.
This is what was phenomenal to me. He was helping us sheep hunt. Great sheep hunter. And a hunter shot a ram right above the knee and lost him, and no blood to speak of. And Tommy brought him back to the camp. He tracked that ram for 2 days, found him, came back, got the hunter, and got him. And I'm like, "Tell me about this." And I had one of his boys that spoke fluent English, and I said, "I don't want to miss anything." So, you know, because he would speak English, broken English, and then there'd be a Cree word or two, and then he'd get back. So I had his boy James and said, "Tell me exactly what." And he could track. He learned what that foot looked like, and through those rocks, and when he would lose a track, he'd go to, there's little seeps in that country water, little saline seeps, and they called them licks, you know, whether or natural mineral licks. He would go there, knew he had to go to water, and pick him up, leave him there, and then he found him bedded, and came back and got the hunter in 3 days. Wow! The third day they shot him.
Now that's just invaluable to have that on your side. I mean,
you couldn't pick his brain enough, you know. And he was open. He would tell you everything about how they trapped squirrels and which ones ate the best, which color was the best, how to get pine marten. And from all places he would go. He called me boss man. He called me Mike one time.
But otherwise, you were boss man.
Boss man this and boss man that. And
what was the circumstance that he called you Mike?
He said, "Mike, you're a good man."
Wow.
And that's probably the best compliment I ever had up there.
It seems like a guy who's not going to just fill you full of hot air.
No, he wasn't. But he understood the business. You know, he went with that. You know, he would come in and eat and visit, and then they would go to the wrangle tent. I slept down there too, and they kept to themselves. Some, but we're sociable. You know, would come meet the hunters when we got there and around the campfire. But when the guys were having a drink or two after, they didn't drink. They went to their tent, but boy, were they predators. You know, they knew that country, and they knew game, and they knew it was a great learning experience for me. And they taught me how to hunt moose, how to hunt sheep, I don't know how well I learned, but I thought I was doing good. It was a great time.
Was there a story that you were telling one time about that guy Didn't he say something about a papoose or something with somebody, or was that?
I don't know if we want to do that on TV.
I don't know. I thought he predicted something that didn't seem to be very easily predictable. But
No, they had a birth control. He showed this friend of ours, Mike, that's hunted with us a lot, and he showed him these berries, and he said, let's see now how I'm going to put this. After a night with your friend, the lady would eat 9 of these berries, and it would prevent a pregnancy. And we're like, how many kids born or weren't born when they figured out 8 wasn't enough or 9 or whatever, you know?
10 and you dropped
it begs
10.
the question, right? And I remember this Mike that was hunting with us, he was looking at him, and Tommy had counted him out. And he leaned over to see if, like a blueberry, what it would smell like. But he grabbed him by the arm. Oh, no, woman. It's like, I don't know, if a man takes oaths or your history, I don't know. But he was like, oh, it would panic. Oh, gosh, no, woman. But he was explaining these natural, and that was their natural birth control, was 9 of these berries. Their morning after pill, I guess that would be a fair.
Very interesting. I just remember that one stuck out in my head.
I could see why.
Apologies.
I mean, when you're talking about, a lot of these things, including the tracking, it's like, man, it's like I love to hunt and fish, and I love the outdoors, but that level of like just knowledge and detail and just like it's hard for me to fathom, and I'm fearful that a lot of that is like, and maybe not, but lost. Like how much of that are we losing over time, over generations, as we get further and further away? Like, I've come to work here every day. I'm lucky to work with a bunch of passionate hunters, but you still only get so many days in the field every year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like that level of astuteness, or for goodness sakes, the navigation skills. I mean, the best thing that ever happened to me is the GPS, and probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me is the GPS, because I was terrible at navigation to start. So now it allows me to navigate, but then I have learned nothing about navigation.
I like to think that you're working on it, but I just don't know if you're really working on it.
No.
Got it.
And he expressed his concerns about that even 15 years ago. He was like his grandsons and his sons started. They hunted stone sheep with outfitters in BC and were accomplished outdoorsmen, his kids were. And his grandson's GPS, and he's like garbage. He said, no good.
Yeah.
And he said, you'll never learn if you have that. And if the batteries go dead, what are you going to do?
Right.
You're just going to die. So that's what he said, you're just dead. That's how he put it. And he's like, you have to learn this stuff. You have to be, the instincts that he had, like you said, Mark, were phenomenal. And he guided sheep hunters when he was 82 years old. I mean, that guy could travel, and I swore in the snow, he had a pair of muckluck type moccasins that laced up, and the little rubbers that businessmen will wear on their shoes to work years ago, just a little slip over rubber that you put on. You put one of those on that muckluck boot, and that's what he hunted with in the snow. And I swear in 6 inches of snow, he doesn't leave a track. He walks that soft, and he just learned to naturally travel that way. But just a wealth of, how often do you get an opportunity to be around that and to learn from it, And I was that way when I was a little kid. I would talk to guys that drove 12, these 12-team jerk lines from Belfouche, South Dakota to Miles City, grain wagons, how they did that. They got one rope running up to 24 head of horses, driving that many horses with one line in 5 days and sleeping under the wagon. And that stuff is all interesting, because when they're gone, it's gone. I mean, somebody may have written it down somewhere, but I loved to sit and listen to those guys, and I could sit by the hour. And Tommy was generous enough to share. There was nothing he wouldn't tell you about. He would be going somewhere, and he would go, boss man, we'd go over and he'd have his name. He was hell for carving his initials in trees and the date. and it would be, you know, and he'd tell you the story, 30-pack horses, this, such a that, we did this and that, and it would be 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and he would go like all places. He'd say he'd been all places.
Is he still alive?
He is.
Really?
Yeah.
So how old is he now?
94.
Wow.
Hair is still jet black.
And
I think he puts bear grease. He won't tell me that. He does something.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you still like communicate with him every once in a while?
On occasion,
Yeah.
you know, not maybe once a year I'll hear from him, but
Does he call you on the phone, or how does he?
his son or his daughter will call and then put him on the phone.
Oh,
and he's
okay.
actually, you can understand him better on the phone because he doesn't have the hand and the Cree word. You know, he's more, he uses more English when he's on.
Is he still guiding hunts?
I don't think he is.
He's retired.
Yeah,
now?
I think he's just a
94.
legend up there. You know, the oil companies will fly him around in helicopters, and he shows them where Cree burial sites are and those kind of things, so they don't disturb any of that stuff. But that's kind of his. They're writing books about him up there now. You know, he's just. But for me to go from a little old ranch in eastern Montana to get an opportunity through the hunting business to experience that with somebody that's a legend in their country, you know, was pretty special to me. And my son and my daughter both got to experience that. They came up and helped us in that business. So, and a lot of the hunters that still hunt with us came up there with us. So yeah, they've got stories about him too. You know. But, yeah, but you know, everybody, when you spend that many hours outside with a variety of people, only good things can happen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Do you have a hunt that stands out above them all?
I have a species that I like to hunt more than I like it all, but boy, as far as just one hunt, Mark, I you know, when we sit and visit, you'll say something, it'll prompt something 30 years ago, and there's just so many things. But I guess I really don't have one. There's times when I know some of them that I feel the most pressure on it, and we've always made it, you pay the money and you get the same service no matter whether I like you or I don't like you. It doesn't matter. If I'm going to take your money, we're going to work just as hard. And now with that said, you have people that his dream is to shoot, this particular guy's dream was to shoot a nice mule deer buck. And he booked the hunt. This is in 1990, 3 years ahead. And his wife got a second job because she was behind us and all excited because this was his dream. And he got a second job, and they saved, and boy, you have some sleepless nights. And it's not because this guy can afford it, so I'm not going to worry about it. It isn't. I don't, you know, if hunting's tough, I don't sleep very good. And you can't control it, but it still doesn't keep you from but when you have those kind of situations, it just can't help but. And again, you know, there's really no justice in hunting, so you're doing everything you can, all the things, you know, the old saying, control everything you can the best you can and hope it works. And that guy shot the biggest deer we killed all year and was probably the biggest deer we'd got in 10 years. And you just go, you know there's a God when that happens. You know? You're just like, oh. You know, and his wife's calling, you know, there was phones in, and she was calling, how was today? And he was excited, and it was like, Mike, you know, I just want to experience it, you know, but you could feel in yourself. And
like,
it wasn't.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
It wasn't him. It was just, he didn't put me in that position, but you know what it takes. You know, people go, and when you have an opportunity to share that would probably be one of the more special hunts of that I was like, oh. And it was about the fourth day of a 5-day hunt, you know. So we didn't get down to the last minute, but I did get one really good night's sleep after that.
That's what I was going to say. Did you sleep good that night?
I sure did. We had a beer and a little whiskey, and we got some attaboys and patted each other on the back, and we were the world's best at that time.
That's
there ever
that's when you
was.
can soak it in a little
You
bit.
can, and that's the thing about it is you need to. I find, and my brother and I talk about that. We need to be able to appreciate. You do at the time. Okay, we got the bull back. We've all had a drink, hung up, and tomorrow it's 0-0. You got to start over, but you need to. And I didn't do that rodeoing either. When you won, it was okay. That's what I'm supposed to do. When it didn't work, it pushed you to try to get better, but you never, when it was all over and you look back, you wish you would have taken more time to, and John, my brother, and I that are doing this now, we take the time and go like, you know what, that was good. That was good. We got to be a part of their dream, and you need to be okay with that instead of focusing on, boy, if I'd have done this or this, that he wouldn't have got away. That. So, because you can beat yourself up. Like what they say, you look in the rearview mirror, all it'll do is make your neck hurt. So you got to just go ahead. So we're learning to appreciate the good times as well as, and learn from the bad, and just don't beat yourself up over that. Learn and try to get better at what you do. And 40 years, you're still learning.
That's a good mentality.
And I appreciate the opportunity to learn.
You mentioned a critter you like to chase most. What is that?
Oh yeah.
We ran red mountain lions, Mark, and we hunted bighorn sheep, moose, bears, antelope, mule deer, elk with a rifle, bow. But archery elk hunting is probably there's something about an elk bugle that still just sends chills down my spine, and I've heard it how many times. But the first time I hear it in the fall, the 50th time I hear it in the fall, I can't believe it. Did you hear that? It's just like I'm like a little kid. I'm just like, holy smokes, And when you're able to, you get to experience so many things, and I love rifle hunting, so it isn't about that. But as you know, you get a bull at 250 yards, the hunt's over. Bow hunting, he's at 100 yards, and we're just getting ready to get in the mix here, and we've got to get him inside of 50, 40, 30, 25 is better. And to do that and to help somebody else get in a position, that's probably, and I have respect for all the animals that we hunt, and it's kind of harder as I mature. You take something's life, right? And when I first started, it was about percentage of kills. So you needed to shoot some stuff, and that was good. And it still is good. But I just always have a little more of, every year it gets a little worse. You get a little more of an empty spot when you go up there and pat him on the back before you load him up. But the next morning you get up and you go just as hard as you can to try it again, So, I think the experience that I get from archery elk hunting is there's just so much of the close encounters and the tactical things that you do trying to understand. You hear a bull and what is he saying? Is he got cows, doesn't he? And how to approach this and how to get him in a position and get the hunter in a position. It's hard enough by yourself, right? But to get somebody not knowing what they think, what they see, and you're trying to drag a bull through there in a position for them to, so that the challenges and things that go with that, I think that's probably
that was the thing that I've archery hunted with you before, and that was the thing, just seeing how you do that. I mean, it's like I've archery elk hunted for many years before I hunted with you, and then it's like I thought I knew how to archery elk hunt, and then I started hunting with you, Mike, and it was like just these little nuanced things that like you may not even know that you're doing them, but I picked up right away. It was like, wow, he's got like that little trick and that little trick and that little trick, things that like I never thought of before, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and it's just like that experience, that knowledge that you have from doing that. I thought it was pretty cool to see and just learn from that. It's like I thought I knew how to archery elk hunt until I started hunting with you, Mike.
Yeah, it is. Like Gene told me about the trapping. Is you try to be a student of. And it changes because this worked last week, this worked last month, this worked for, we have little things like, and I don't know how they do it, but guys will, I don't know how the elk do it, but they understand. They sense movement. Like our theory is, we'll try to. We have you set up. We're trying to a bugling bull, whether we're bringing him with a cow collar. We want him to come by you, and when he gets broadside and when he steps into a shooting lane, draw on him. Make sure your body's square. When you hear him, and get your feet where you want them, so that you don't have to move your feet, because you can't shoot like Cupid does, right? Get your feet, get your body where you want it. And if anything, if he's coming from here, get more this way, because you can shoot behind you without ever, and draw on him. When he's in the open, when he puts his foot down where you want to shoot him, draw on him, because he's looking for motion. There's a cow or there's a bull here, and stop him with that draw, and 90% of the time they will. And then they're looking at you. And you've got to try to say the spot. He'll give you 10 seconds to shoot him. Don't worry about, I got to hurry because he's looking at me. And I said, he saw the movement. He's trying to figure out what was that. But it's interesting, the bull will come and people will they've shot standing up, they practiced, and they practice in the yard at targets, and they see the bull and they get down on their knees to hide. And the bull's walking along and he just stops and looks over there. And the guy's like, I didn't move, I didn't do anything. And a lot of times I can see the hunter, and he didn't. And I'm going, what's going on here? And then you go like, every predator in our country is this tall. And they see something that's everything, for the most part, except blow down trees, is vertical. And they can see something out of place that's vertical, like what looks a little strange, but they're okay with it. But when it's this tall, they're not. Mm-hmm. And they'll just turn. And that's the only thing whatever it doesn't work. And I think it's a predator thing that caused them, that's not right. And they'll pull out of there.
So you'd recommend just standing up and
I
drawing?
do. And particularly, so you talk to the hunter after, and I'm not discrediting the hunter. Did you practice shooting off your knees? No, I've never shot off my knees. That probably isn't a good time to learn. So but you just react. Oh my God, here he is, and he's close. Might be 15 yards from you. And you're like, he's going to see me, and we have him set up in a position that he goes by, and the idea, we're behind you 50 yards, is to keep him from looking. And then when you draw, when he sees that motion, but you have to have your feet. What we found is that if you go take a step and then draw, the step stops him, and then he sees you move to draw.
You only get one move.
He'll only let you get one move. And so when you're sitting here like this, and he goes by, and it's by the time, and he'll stop like that and turn and look, and everything is dead still by then. You just got to try to get past the fact that his head's over here looking at you, and you just got to poke him in the ribs. And it's
something else when they're looking right at you.
It is, Jimmy. It puts you in your blood runs cold, and it's, I'm glad they're hunting them, because I don't know if I could do it. And my heart's pounding. I got to put my hands over my ears so they don't hear my heart pounding.
And they're such a big, powerful animal. I mean, I completely agree with you, Mike. Like, archery elk hunting is like just the ultimate adrenaline rush to me. Because when you hear them bugling, and there's just so much power behind that bugle, it just makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck every time. Yes, and they can move so fast, like they're like a ghost. It's just like you hear them and you're like, oh, they're a mile away, and in 30 seconds they can be on top of you and they didn't make a sound. And you're like, how did an animal that big with antlers that big come that fast through blowdown and brush and whatever, and you didn't hear a sound?
And they're just standing there.
Yeah.
You see all of them. You're looking for the flicker or something, and you go, uh-oh. You see the little, you're watching, you heard him bugle over here last, and you go, oh. and he's standing there. And so that's the beauty of and again, like we used to have elk hang up 80, 90 yards. How many times have you talked to elk hunter? God, if he'd have just come a few more steps, right? And you go like, I hear that all the time from elk stories from other people. Besides, I've witnessed it so much. And I'm going like, what's the deal? Why do we all have to deal with that? We've got him, he came for a quarter of a mile, half a mile, and he stops at 80 yards and that's it. And so I got to scratch my head and I'm going like, you know, elk react to what they see, what they smell, and what they hear. And I'm going like, I need to get, because they come up over the break and you can see them, and then they can see where you are, right? And they're like, so I'm going like, they're going to me, they're going, why can't I see this? And then they go, self-reliant, right. So we've got a difference in the way we set up. If there's and we always do, if there's a little break, a little knob here, and there's an area we want to call in, we put the hunter where he can shoot that bull when he steps up there. And we go down here where he's got to come all the way to there to see where I'm at.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's kind of a, you know, it's just like if somebody outside your house hollers, Jimmy, come give me your wife's. You walk out the door and you look, first thing you do is to see where she's at and then go. Yeah. And the bull is doing the same. He walks up and I should be able, because they know exactly, as you guys know, they know exactly where that sound came from, whether you're 2 miles away or not. And they walk up and they look and they can't. Well, when he stops and looks for me, like I should be able to see that cow or that bull, we need to have the hunter in a position to shoot him right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's all of a sudden the light came on and our success went up 40, 50%.
That's like if you're going to be roping your sister, you make sure you put a tape recorder of you yelling to her out in the yard, and then you stand right next to the door. She's looking for the tape recorder.
That's true. That's true. Yep, I agree with that.
It is archery elk hunting. I mean, just the time of year, it's magical. Bugles are magical. I don't know. That's I love all forms of elk hunting, but it does seem like they were just meant to be bow hunted, though.
I'm the only one at the table who hasn't done it. I might have to hit Mike up.
You should
soon,
probably do this.
But as we pointed out, there are some similarities in what you're talking about to turkey hunting in ways. It's just that when you shoot an elk, it's a lot more days of food afterwards.
Yes.
I finish off a turkey in about 2 days.
Every elk hunter is pulling their hair out when they hear that that analogy. But I from the call, I think there are similarities.
It's exciting. It's
very.
I mean,
it's
yeah,
exciting,
but then you're
and
dealing
with the calling. With the calling
Oh
component.
yeah. Just I mean,
it's interactive.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing I like too about elk hunting is the interactive nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like a lot of animals you're hunting, you're just looking and that's it. You're not calling to try and get that interaction to get them to come to you or find out where they're at. And turkey hunting is the same way. It's interactive.
And I think there's parallels with keeping them looking, right? You know, they come in and they're like, well, I heard the sound. Mm-hmm. I can see exactly where the sound is coming from because I know where it's coming from, and there's nothing there. Like, I don't care for it. I'm out of here. And, you know, it's funny. I can think back
I get
to
those hung up gobblers, Mark. 70, 80
70
yards.
Yeah, you can YouTube how to get fix that situation.
So
just
it's
make sure you
that.
plan a good hour to finish that YouTube video. I'll tell you about it later.
Okay, great.
But you know,
I'd love to hear it.
Mike, you're talking. You know, I think even maybe archery hunting in general. But you just get to experience more. You get to experience more time in the woods, oftentimes, more and closer interactions with the animals, oftentimes because it doesn't work out. I always say in bow hunting, everything has to go right and then go right again. Mm-hmm.
I agree.
And you get to see some wild stuff, like, hearing you talk through about, I also have a, knock on wood, I can change that, but man, nothing ever goes right when I bow hunt elk. Like as you're talking through, I'm thinking.
I wasn't going to say it.
I'm thinking of like this scenario where it was so close and all this worked out. This scenario, like the last bull I called in, I got pinned down. Now I'm getting into story time, but I was coming across this kind of open park, and I looked up, and there were elk bedded on this hillside. So I just kind of got down by this tree. And I'm like, well, I don't think they saw me, but I don't really want to walk out in the open this way, and I don't want to walk out in the open anymore this way, so I just hung tight and started calling while I bugled this bull in, and I ripped this last bugle, and he's still pretty far away, and, I thought he was far away, and I ripped this last bugle, and he pops out like 200 yards away, and he rips a bugle, and walks right to me, gets to like 40 yards, starts thrashing the earth with his horns, and I'm just like, I was in a sitting position. And then, of course, the whole situation came unglued, as it usually does.
Sunglasses?
Yeah, different, but yeah.
Oh.
But then it's also nothing like that makes you want to go even more.
Oh, well, what an experience! We may have 2 or 3 of those a day, and we just come home at night and feel like the sucked orange. You're just all that adrenaline so many times and up and down, but how many times? How do you experience that if you're not out there amongst them? It's and then when it does work, it's just a special thing. So, I agree with the fact that it goes wrong way more than it goes right. But in the little draft, the wind, the wind, and you just got to put in your time and put in the work, and sooner or later the mountains will give you one, kind of a thing. And so it's just interesting to hear your stories, and that's how you learn too from what. Like John, my brother and I, and the hunters, we want to hear what their successes and failures, and something John and I do, and we've tried to make to really, when something doesn't work, we pick that thing apart ourselves, our positioning, where we put the hunter, why this didn't, and we could have done this better, but we found that you learn just as much by the good stuff, because it didn't happen by accident. Mm-hmm. And so you need to write that down in your book. Okay, I set up here, this was kind of weather, this is where the bull came from, so that you can give your chance to put yourself in the best position again. And sometimes, okay, that was our job, that's what we were supposed to do. It's kind of like being a referee at a high school basketball game. If you did a perfect job, well, that was your job. You make one mistake and every mom in the stands and their kid, everybody's mad, right? So you go like, okay, that was my job, and the hunter's tickled, and that's what he's here for. But you need to take that time and go through that and say, what did we do right? And be cool with the fact that, dang, this was a great day, but then apply that just as much as you would trying to change what maybe went wrong to get you. But it's nothing like it.
Yeah.
There isn't.
Sam says you have quite the dog.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I want to talk about the dog.
We
got 2 dogs.
I did have.
Oh, you did have?
Yep, I did have. And he was 14, had a great life. And he's at the ranch, so that's all good.
That's good.
But everybody that has dogs, their dog is the coolest ever, right? And I'm no different. And
not mine.
Is that right?
I love my dogs, but they puke about every other day. They're just sensitive stomachs, man.
Oh.
Anyway.
But we got him to, as a pup, and the dog that recently passed away was when I came to the ranch in White Sulphur Springs. He was my hired man, and we could move 300 head of cattle by ourselves, and I didn't know. I always had dogs, and we had a few kind of cow dogs, and they were kind of cow dogs because we didn't know how to make them good cow dogs. So I got a dog that they're bred to do it, and they're a crossbred dog, Australian Shepherd, Kelpie, and things, and they have a concoction that this guy developed, and this is the best cow dog ever because he can. Not too rough for sheep and rough enough and aggressive to handle cattle and so on. They call him Hanging Tree Dog. It was named after a brand this guy had. That was the name of the ranch. And so I got one of these dogs, and I took the time to go to Texas, and I talked to the dog whisperer, that's Cowboy, that trains dogs, and his name is Charlie Traer, and Charlie is probably the best dog man I've ever been around, and I went down and spent 2 or 3 days with him. And he taught me from a dog's perspective. And so I still struggle with that at times. Particular men, when your dog does something wrong, you take it personal. It's something he's doing just to irritate me, right? Where women are probably better dog people than men because of that. But Charlie really helped me with a lot of perspective things and consistency, kind of like raising kids. You try to be consistent as you can, and dogs are so forgiving for our mistakes, and they love us no matter what. And had these dogs and had the time when they were pups to get them going. And so we kind of, like my horse that I rode, we learned together and learned to trust each other. And it's phenomenal, the vocabulary that they will have and understand how to, by using to move cattle. And they can move cow-calf pairs, but they understand that a mom has got a baby, and you can, as long as she's moving along, but if you get too close, she's going to come fight because of wolves, coyotes. That's their nature, predator-prey thing.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to teach your dog. You have to teach your dog to give her some space, but keep her going, and then teach the cow. As long as you got your baby and moving, this dog's not going to be a problem. And then to get him the vocabulary where you can send him around to the left or to the right or down and up and go up and stop him, or just turn the front end and then come back. And Charlie helped me with that. And then the dog, he told me, he said, when your dog has a bad day, you should learn enough by it that he doesn't have another one. And that was quite a statement, so I would let them teach me what I did wrong and how. And I'm horseback, right? And he's this tall. And I'm trying to get him to do something, and he can't see there. What's his perspective? And why did he do it? Charlie told me, he said, when a dog does something wrong, if they know right from wrong, which you're supposed to have taught him, he thinks he's doing the right thing. So why does he think that way? Don't get upset with a dog. Just try to understand, why did he do that, and fix it. But he doesn't need to be, you don't have to really hold him accountable, just put him in a better position. So something's not working. If that dog knows, why did he do it? And so through that, it's almost like sitting here playing a Nintendo game. You can send him here and there and easy and tell him to, they have, I think the Scottish started the come by and away to me, which are directional ways for a dog, and then easy and down and walk up. You'll walk him up to a cow there, and you'll stop. And you put a little more pressure on her. She's going to fight, or she's not. And you'll squeeze there, walk up. You take a couple more steps. Yeah. And if she's pretty quick, you'll tell him, if she looks like she's about to get after him, or she's trying to decide whether she's going to go like she's supposed to go. But when we were a little tight, you tell him to get out, have him move out there. You can move him back and forth and watch the cow's personality pretty quick. You try to put her in a position to do the right thing, so she understands. Because people send your dog in there and he chews the ears off of her, she's going to turn and run and go the right way, but your dog's in, it's an ego thing for you. Man, look how tough my dog is, but it puts the dog in a position to get hurt, hard on the cattle, I have a perfect day when my dog doesn't bite one cow and everybody just goes about their business, and cows learn the dog, and I'll go looking through cows, for example. And here I've come with the dog, and those girls will get up, and if I get inside of 100 yards, they go mother up, get their calf, and pick themselves up and start moving. And I can get 100 yards and say down, and they'll sit there and I'll ride through and make sure everybody's healthy. Go out the other side of the cows and say, that'll do, and my dog will come around the cows and catch up to where I'm at. And the cows are cow broke, and the dog is non-confrontational unless he has to be when you ask him to. Like, we'll have a cow come out and fight a dog, go back, and he's well up back from where he needs to be, and she comes out about 3 times. You can get a hold of her, and blood will be going off of both ends of her, and as soon as she breaks and runs back to the cows, there, stop the dog, and that cow learns. I just stay in the bunch, keep my calf, keep going.
When I'm here, I'm good.
We don't have any problems. If you want to pick a fight, we can do that, but we don't want to do it. Man. So they've taught me so many things, and the thing about a dog you can have a bad day, come out of the house, get after them for something they didn't do. They don't care. They still love you. It doesn't matter. And you know, I think us as humans could learn a lot. You know, I don't think they made. It's like kids. I'm not sure they made a bad kid. They just made bad parents. I think they don't make bad dogs. They just make bad dog owners sometimes. I know.
Yeah,
I've stuck myself out there.
That's me. That's me. I was complaining about my dogs. But
Yeah.
it's definitely.
Yeah,
Probably me.
Mike's talking about his dog and how you can direct it in doing this. If we took my dog out there, you just wouldn't see it again. You know, just
That is probably true from what I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm from Washington State, so I grew up a Seahawks fan. I know Jim, you and Sam really like that.
No one cares.
But
That's something that we try to
for you
into your head.
guys, for you guys, and I've adopted the Packers as a second home
It
here.
is true.
in
It is
some
true.
ways. But I thought we might cover maybe the most important thing today, that Mike is a Packers fan.
That's right.
That's true.
Well, and you've really only ever been to Wisconsin once before,
That's right.
and you were up at Lambeau Field.
I did. I got the privilege of going there. Yep. It was an amazing place. And I started being a Packer fan when I was 6, watching a black and white TV in the Ice Bowl. And Jerry Kramer, who was credited with the block that got Bart Starr in the end zone against the Dallas Cowboys, that he was from a little town north of where I was raised in Miles City, Jordan. And so just kind of from there, I've just kind of followed him ever since. And I've found that I really have to work hard when the Packers get beat to not understand it's just a game. It's not it's not real life. They'll get beat on Sunday, whatever. I'll get up Monday, have a cup of coffee, and this day just isn't good. What's the matter? The weather's good, your dogs are happy, you're gonna go do some cowboy and you're gonna do something? Oh, that's right. The Packers got beat last night. Dang. So I'm trying to learn to be a let it go fan, but it's struggled from time to time. But I am a dyed-in-the-wool Packer man.
How do you feel about the Dallas Cowboys? I mean, they're called the Cowboys. Where did they get off being called the Cowboys? They seem a little bit, feel like they, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a Texas thing, I think.
Yeah.
Lone Star, Texas thing. Things are always, and this Charlie Trayer that helped me with he's a Texas guy, you know, and so I've got nothing. There's some, I mean, that's cowboy country, so that's where it came from. But the Dallas Cowboys, I will say this, as a Packer fan, there's 32 teams in the NFL, right, with an opportunity to play 31 at some point in time. There's one team that I would rather beat than any of the other 31, and that's Dallas.
It is quite
The playoffs had to have been pretty special.
Oh, they
then.
were. You know, I was just like, you know, we had a young team last year, and Jordan Love and and I've been a Jordan Love fan from the get-go. You know, he might not be good enough, and I said, I like that kid, you know. And I told my brother, he's a Denver Bronco fan, so we had our predictions when the year started. I said, you know, halfway through the year, our defensive coordinator was catching a lot of heat, and they're probably they might lose him halfway through the year, and Jordan Love's gonna be the real deal. And the year before, when Aaron was there, they didn't have a great year, but the last 2 or 3 games they had a chance. If we win them all, we can go to the playoffs. I said the Packers are going to be right there they're going to be in that same position. And they were, and they did, and then they took it a step further and almost took it 2 steps, obviously. But yes, I got. God, I'm waiting for the draft, and I've got some people. They should need to call me because there's some guys that they should get. And I've been studying, and I'm pretty sure I got it right.
That's part of your tour
We
to
definitely
Wisconsin
have.
here.
We got to get this podcast to the Packers ASAP.
Yeah.
They
so
do.
that they can get a hold of Mike.
Call at the number at the bottom of the screen. Is that how you do it?
Yeah.
Rancher, outfitter,
Yeah.
NFL consultant.
yeah. Cowboy, NFL scout.
Future GM of the Green Bay Packers. That's part of your visit here, though. We're gonna get you a meeting, or we'll try. So
Oh, geez, that's
I do like that he
special.
says we though.
I mean,
He's
that's
from Montana, and I'm hearing him say "we" an hour and using that vernacular. So
Yes, yes, we're all in this thing. And I'm a fan, which is supposed to be short for fanatic. So when I say crazy stuff, it's just part of being a fan, right?
That's
yeah.
right.
Yep.
That's the expectation.
Exactly.
How do you feel about Wisconsin? You know, coming from out west, you got mountains there. It's a little bit different terrain. You come out to Wisconsin. I know sometimes people like when they fly in, and I felt this way when we've gone on our trips out west. You fly into an airport out west, and you're like flying into mountains, and then you fly back home, and you're like, I can see the curvature of the earth from this seat on this plane. How do you feel about it? Do you like it?
It's different, like you say, and I look back, the first time I came to country like this, where you had hardwood rolling, you know, I was talking to Sam today, we were driving around, and it's so fertile. It looks like it could grow anything, everything, everywhere. The soil's great. I love the old silos that are around here because it's part of what's here. This is how this country was settled, right? Am I correct in that? So, but I went to St. Louis, and I'd been through Tennessee and Kentucky, and similar, you know, the rolling heavy timbered, and I'm like, how did Daniel Boone and those guys ever make it through this country? Because water goes everywhere. You know, you go over a little ridge, the water runs. In our country, a drainage is miles long. You know, when you're hunting in the mountains, Mark, and you go over the top of the ridge, you know you went over the top, correct? And you go like, well, I tied my horse downstream I went upstream, so it's not hard. You know, you're look down at the ground, whichever way the water runs, that'll take me by my horse, right? Or whatever. Here, you know, until you learn, even though I can't see out, I can't see, there's a mountain, okay, that's north of me, I can do this. So for a long way around your question, Jimmy, but I'm like, God, I'd get lost in this country in a minute. You know? If Sam was to put me in a tree stand, I would say, you got to flag me in here so I can or get my GPS, or have Tommy come get me.
Right. Tommy might be able to. I'd never be able to do what Tommy does out here, though, because I usually rely on the sun for my directions. So if it was nighttime, I'm out.
But it's awesome looking country. I mean, it looks like it could grow. You know, they talk about the heartland. This is what it should be. So I really like it. It's certainly different. You know, I'm looking out, staying with Sam and looking out the house, and we were talking about trees greening up and buds, and I said, man, I was talking to Abby, I said, man, when this thing, leaves change, it's got to be phenomenal. You know,
it is.
Different country and different kinds of trees, and some are red and some are, you know, we don't see that as much in that conifer type forest. You know, the quakies and things are there, but I think it's awesome. Yeah,
it's a neat place. It doesn't always get enough credit. Hold on.
The driftless part of Wisconsin.
Will this air in California?
In particular.
Will it?
Yes, it does.
It's a horrible place.
Yeah,
it's full. Yeah,
you're right.
It's full of.
No, you told me that too late. I've been talking about Montana.
It's full of scorpions.
I think we're a little late for that. I think Yellowstone fixed us there. So.
Yeah.
Montefornia.
Yeah. They call them Bos Angeles. I think they're calling Bozeman now.
Yeah,
I've heard that. Say it ain't so.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, you know. I mean, I've got some buddies that live in Bozeman and have hunted out of there a little bit, and even what I've seen, which is probably, it might even be in some ways more dramatic, you know, when you go to a place and then like you go back like 10 years later and you're like, oh, it should be the same as when I left it, and you're oh, it is not the same.
Like they just hit pause for you.
Yeah, it did not pause. Bozeman hasn't paused, and I don't think Montana's paused, and it's because it's yeah, I mean, it is a great place, but for some people,
it's a great. These places,
except it's not great for anybody else that wants to move there.
They're great for the reasons that they were great, and then people go there because they think that they want to have some of that greatness, but they bring all of the poop from wherever they came from,
the rooniness.
Yeah, and that's just it.
Yeah, they want to change it to be like where they came from, and then you're like,
yeah,
but you came here because of the way it was.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but it would just be really great if it was exactly like where I left that I didn't like.
You're right.
Sam, you're using reason and logic.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It doesn't work here.
But, well, Sam, you know, probably Well, I know you know Mike better than any of us. I mean, did we miss anything? Any stories that you're like, oh man, you got to tell this one before we sign off
We
here?
probably did.
I
It
mean,
probably has
lots
to
of
be, like,
stuff, but we
Like
volumes.
millions,
This,
right?
this podcast needs to be done in volumes.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, you could go on and on. I mean, I think we kind of covered highlights of a lot of the high points, you know. But yeah, I mean, I could probably sit and talk Mike for hours about just, you know, cowboying, hunting, you name it.
How are your roping skills now, Sam? Because you've gotten to do a couple of roping sessions with Mike. Do you
I think
feel
I'm ready
like,
to go pro.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
I think he's right.
Mike. Okay. Mike concurs.
I feel like
Got to fine tune a couple things and
Yeah,
we're good,
yeah.
right?
Well, I'm glad you said that, Sam, because we've actually lined up a demo.
right. We got Reba McEntire's dad
Yeah.
in the next room.
Yeah.
I feel like what's his name in Meet the Parents? I got a neck, Greg. Could you rope me? I'll tell Mom. No, that's pretty good though. I look forward to seeing.
yeah, no, I
skills.
pretty much can't rope worth anything.
I
So,
tried it. I tried it once with you as well, and
Yeah.
it was. It's not at all like Yosemite Sam makes it seem, or any of the other cartoons. that we
You're
used
right.
To
He
watch.
makes it look so easy, Jim.
Yeah, it's just you just do that, and then
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But well, good stuff, Mike. I appreciate you joining us today and sharing a little bit about your life. And it sounds like a very interesting, cool life full of lots of very neat experiences. So I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure we could talk for hours. And probably when we jump off here, we'll just keep talking. But yeah, I appreciate you coming out. It's awesome having you here in Wisconsin, and thanks for making the trip.
Boy, it certainly was my pleasure. I enjoy the visit, and it's always good to talk hunting with anybody that'll listen. You know, it's a great thing.
Awesome.
And thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Awesome.
Jimmy.
Thanks.
Sam,
All
thanks for lining this up. Everybody out there, thanks everybody for listening. And until next time, we'll catch you on the next one. Maybe with a rope.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe around the neck. Bye. There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.